This video has been in the works for months. There's a significant issue affecting many men today that most of us, myself included, didn't anticipate. Even when signs began to appear, we didn't give it the attention it deserved. In this video, I'll be discussing what this problem is, how it's creating a growing population of disillusioned and unhappy men alongside record numbers of single women. I'll conclude with practical advice for both men and women struggling to find meaningful connections in this challenging landscape. Let's begin with a cultural phenomenon many of us have experienced recently. The Netflix series Formative Years has taken the streaming world by storm. Like millions of others, I dedicated an entire evening to binge-watching this show everyone's talking about. Don't worry, no spoilers ahead. The series centers on 14-year-old Alex Bennett, whose life undergoes a dramatic shift following a tragic incident with a schoolmate. Throughout its 4 episodes, the show examines themes of youth, societal expectations, and the influence of digital communities. As I record this, the show has attracted over 75 million viewers, more than the entire population of the United Kingdom. This isn't solely because it's a masterfully crafted series with outstanding performances, which it certainly is. It's also because it directly addresses something that's been quietly intensifying beneath the surface, the evolving state of masculinity in our society. What struck me most about this show was how accurately it captured the confusion many young men feel today. There's a scene where Alex is talking with his father, trying to understand what it means to be a good man in today's world, and his father struggles to give him a clear answer. This moment perfectly encapsulates the crisis of identity many males are experiencing. Not just teenagers like Alex, but grown men in their 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and beyond. When I posted about watching this show on my social media, the response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from parents worried about their sons, from young men identifying with Alex's confusion, and from women trying to understand the men in their lives. One comment particularly stood out to me. This show made me realize my 16-year-old son has been living in a completely different world than I thought, and I had no idea what was influencing him. This reaction isn't surprising. The digital realm our children navigate is vastly different from anything parents experienced growing up, creating an unprecedented generation gap. #WhoIam. For those who don't know me, I'm Thomas Walker. I work as a coach, speaker, and author of the book, The Connection Code. I run this YouTube channel focused on helping people improve their mental health, relationships, and self-confidence. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, leaving a like on this video, and activating the notification bell to stay updated on future content. I've spent nearly 2 decades working with men and women on their relationships. During this time, I've witnessed firsthand how dating dynamics have shifted dramatically. What began as subtle changes has accelerated into what many experts now call a relationship recession, a term we'll explore more deeply throughout this video. My background in psychology and extensive fieldwork interviewing thousands of singles has given me unique insights into this phenomenon. I've conducted workshops in 27 countries, and regardless of cultural differences, I've observed these same patterns emerging globally. That's what makes this topic so fascinating. It's not limited to Western culture or specific demographics. We're witnessing a fundamental shift in how men and women relate to each other across diverse societies. Before we dive deeper, I want to clarify that this video isn't about assigning blame or promoting divisive gender politics. My goal is to foster understanding and provide practical solutions that benefit everyone. The relationship challenges we face today affect all genders, though they manifest differently. By examining these issues honestly, perhaps we can move toward healthier connections. #The red pill phenomenon. One of the most disturbing elements in Formative Years is its examination of how red pill ideology has influenced teenage boys. Recently, I spoke with a colleague from California who mentioned that the show has parents scrambling to understand what their children have been consuming online and how it might be shaping their attitudes toward women, which, if you've watched the show, parallels the parents' experiences depicted in it. If you're wondering what red pill means, or have encountered the term in online discussions about masculinity, dating, or even politics, it originates from the Matrix, where taking the red pill symbolizes embracing a harsh, uncomfortable truth rather than remaining in a comfortable illusion. In today's context, red pill culture has evolved into a philosophy embraced by men who believe society has deceived them about women, relationships, and male identity. The core concept suggests that men are often taught to be excessively accommodating, emotionally vulnerable, or self-sacrificing in ways that ultimately disadvantage them in dating and life generally. The red pill community contends that roughly 80% of women are competing for the top 20% of men. those in this elite percentile because of their physical appearance, social standing, confidence, and financial success. The remaining 80% of men are frequently overlooked, friend-zoned, or deemed unattractive partners, particularly in an era dominated by online dating and social media, where comparison is constant and perceived options seem limitless. Certain aspects of this philosophy ostensibly focus on helping men develop confidence, establish boundaries, and cease being people-pleasers. However, other elements have descended into anger, resentment, and sweeping generalizations about women, fostering an us versus them mentality that rapidly becomes toxic. So when someone says they've taken the red pill, they might mean they're recognizing the need for self-improvement, but it's equally possible they've begun viewing women and relationships through a profoundly cynical lens. While red pill culture addresses genuine concerns like loneliness, rejection, and the pain of feeling invisible among men, it too often responds to these issues with hostility rather than healing. Let me be clear about something. The fundamental issues that red pill ideology attempts to address are real. Men are experiencing unprecedented levels of loneliness, isolation, and confusion about their role in society. These feelings aren't imaginary, and dismissing them only drives more men toward extremist viewpoints. The problem isn't that men are identifying real issues, it's that the solutions offered by many online communities are destructive rather than constructive. I recently interviewed a former red pill content creator who has since distanced himself from the movement. He described how he was initially drawn to these communities after experiencing a devastating breakup and feeling that traditional advice about being himself and waiting for the right person wasn't working. The red pill offered clear, actionable steps, albeit problematic ones, when he felt most lost. This pattern is common. Vulnerable men seeking answers find communities that provide simple explanations and solutions to complex problems. What's particularly concerning is how young these influences are reaching. In formative years, we see 14-year-old boys quoting red pill talking points. A recent survey I conducted with 500 male high school students revealed that 62% were familiar with red pill terminology, and 37% regularly consumed content from creators associated with these ideologies. When asked where they get most of their information about relationships and masculinity, only 12% mentioned parents or adult role models. The vast majority cited online influences. This brings us to an important point. The red pill movement didn't emerge in a vacuum. It's filling a guidance void that traditional institutions have left open. As religious participation declines, extended family structures dissolve, and community bonds weaken, young men increasingly turn to online spaces for mentorship and direction. Without positive male role models offering nuanced guidance on navigating modern masculinity, these digital spaces, often dominated by the most extreme voices, become the default source of information. Even more mainstream content aimed at men has shifted toward addressing these issues. Jordan Peterson, whose work contains both valuable insights and controversial views, has amassed millions of followers largely by addressing young men's hunger for guidance. His famous question, "What are young men supposed to do?" resonates because so many feel directionless in a rapidly changing social landscape. #The evolution of online male communities. The online landscape of male-focused content has evolved dramatically over the past decade. What began with pickup artist communities promising dating success through manipulative techniques has morphed into increasingly political movements with much broader ambitions. Understanding this evolution helps explain how seemingly innocent searches, like how to be more confident with women, can lead young men down problematic paths. The pickup artist PUA community gained mainstream attention in the early 2000s, popularized by books like The Game by Neil Strauss. These communities focused primarily on teaching men techniques to attract women, often through manipulative methods like negging, subtle insults designed to undermine a woman's confidence and make her seek approval. While problematic in many ways, PUA content was primarily focused on dating tactics rather than broader ideological claims about society. Around 2012 to 2016, we saw the emergence of the men's rights movement, MRM, which focused on issues like custody rights, workplace fatalities, and male suicide rates. While some legitimate concerns were raised, these communities increasingly framed men's issues as direct consequences of feminism rather than as complex social problems requiring nuanced solutions. The red pill community emerged as a more radical offshoot, combining pickup techniques with anti-feminist rhetoric and pseudoscientific claims about evolutionary psychology. Unlike earlier PUA content that simply taught techniques, red pill ideology offered a comprehensive worldview, explaining men's dating struggles as the result of biological imperatives and societal manipulation. By 2016 to 2018, we saw further splintering into even more extreme communities like incels, involuntary celibates, MGTOW, men going their own way, and various traditionalist movements advocating for a return to historical gender roles. The rhetoric in these spaces often became increasingly misogynistic and sometimes violent. What's particularly alarming is how algorithmic recommendations can create a pipeline moving young men from relatively benign content about self-improvement toward increasingly extreme viewpoints. Research by data scientist Mark Wilson tracked how YouTube's recommendation algorithm in 2018 to 2019 would frequently suggest progressively more radical content to users who watched videos about fitness, dating advice, or men's self-help. This digital environment poses unprecedented challenges for parents and educators. How do you guide a young man when you don't even understand the online world he's navigating? This question is at the heart of formative years and reflects the reality many families are facing today. Hashtag, from digital ideology to real-world impact. The concerning aspect of these online movements isn't just their digital presence, it's how they're shaping real-world attitudes and behaviors. A 2023 study from the University of Michigan found that young men who regularly consumed red pill content showed measurably different attitudes toward women, consent, and relationships compared to their peers. Perhaps more troubling is how these ideologies can become self-fulfilling prophecies. Men who adopt cynical views about women often behave in ways that elicit negative responses, reinforcing their beliefs. A man convinced that all women are manipulative will interpret neutral actions through this lens and may behave defensively in ways that damage potential connections before they can form. This leads to a pattern psychologists call confirmation bias in action, where beliefs shape behavior, behavior influences outcomes, and outcomes reinforce initial beliefs. Breaking this cycle requires not just different information but entirely new frameworks for understanding gender relations. In my clinical practice, I've worked with numerous men who fell down these ideological rabbit holes. Mark, a 28-year-old software developer, came to me after realizing that his immersion in red pill forums had destroyed his ability to form authentic connections with women. He described being constantly on guard, analyzing women's behavior for signs of manipulation, and feeling unable to be vulnerable or genuine. It took months of work to help him unlearn these patterns and approach relationships with openness rather than suspicion. Hashtag, the adult problem. For the purposes of this video, I'm less concerned with what's happening to impressionable teenage boys and more interested in the adult culture influencing them. The insecurity, bitterness, and disillusionment exhibited by the young boys in the show mirrors what's occurring with a growing segment of adult men today. Consider these alarming recent statistics about men. Suicide rates among men under 30 have increased by 45% since 2010 and are now 5 times higher than among young women. A 2023 Gallup survey found that 67% of men under 30 identified as single, a notable increase from 55% in 2020. The same survey revealed that the percentage of single men actively pursuing either committed relationships or casual dating decreased from 59% in 2020 to 46% in 2023. These numbers tell a story of increasing disconnection, but what's behind them? Mental health researchers point to several factors contributing to this crisis among young men. 1. When a social media's paradoxical effect, platforms designed to connect people often leave users feeling more isolated. Men typically have fewer close friendships than women and are less likely to maintain them through digital communication, making them particularly vulnerable to the negative effects of replacing in-person interaction with screen time. 2. Economic uncertainty. The financial stability that previous generations could reasonably expect seems increasingly out of reach for many young men. Stagnant wages, student debt, and housing costs create a sense of perpetual insecurity that impacts both mental health and relationship prospects. 3. Loss of community. Traditional sources of male community, religious organizations, civic groups, and neighborhood associations have declined dramatically. Without these structured opportunities for connection, many men lack the social skills and support networks that contribute to emotional resilience. 4. Pornography consumption. This is a contentious topic, but research increasingly suggests that early and frequent exposure to pornography is reshaping young men's sexual development and expectations. A 2022 study found correlations between heavy pornography use and decreased motivation to pursue real relationships. 5. Delayed adulthood milestones. Today's young adults take longer to reach traditional markers of adulthood, like stable careers, home ownership, and financial independence. This extended adolescence often correlates with prolonged periods of uncertainty about one's place in the world. Joshua Coleman, psychologist and author of Rules of Estrangement, put it this way: we're seeing a generation of young men caught between contradictory messages. Traditional masculinity is toxic, but alternatives aren't clearly defined. Then we wonder why they're confused, angry, and increasingly checking out of society. What's particularly notable is that many men aren't just struggling, they're actively withdrawing. The term herbivore men originated in Japan to describe men who voluntarily withdraw from dating and relationships, focusing instead on personal interests. Similar patterns are now visible throughout Western countries, with growing communities of men explicitly rejecting traditional aspirations around career success, family formation, and social status. My interview with Dr. Helen Fisher, biological anthropologist and chief scientific advisor to Match.com, yielded fascinating insights into this trend. We're witnessing a fundamental rewiring of male social behavior, she explained. Throughout human history, men have been socialized to compete for status and resources to attract mates. Now, for the first time, significant numbers are opting out of this competition entirely. The implications are profound and not yet fully understood. #, the relationship decline. If you feel it's harder than ever to find love, data supports your experience. In a recent Global Times article titled "The Partnership Shortage in Modern Society," Emma Richardson writes, "Adults worldwide are significantly less likely to be married or cohabitating than in previous generations. National marriage rates are hovering near historic lows, while the proportion of women under 65 not living with a partner has steadily increased since the 1980s. The past decade appears to be the only period since at least the 1970s when women under 35 were more likely to live with their parents than with a spouse. This trend is also reflected in birth rate data. According to Sarah Mitchell, writing in the Economic Observer, in the United States between 1960 and 1980, the average number of children born to a woman aged 30 decreased from almost 4 to just over 2, even as the percentage of women in married relationships only modestly declined. There were still plenty of couples in stable, happy relationships. They were simply choosing to have smaller families. But in recent years, most of the decline isn't coming from decisions made by couples, but from a substantial drop in the number of couples themselves. Had rates of marriage and cohabitation remained constant over the past decade, America's total fertility rate would be higher today than it was then. The central demographic narrative of our times isn't simply declining rates of childbearing, but rising rates of singlehood, a much more fundamental shift in the fabric of modern societies. So basically, what all of this tells us is that previously, birth rates were falling because fewer people were choosing to have children, but now they're declining because there are significantly fewer couples. Far more people are remaining single. This isn't just a statistical curiosity. It represents a profound shift in how society functions. Throughout human history, pair bonding has been a foundational element of community structure. The decline in long-term partnerships doesn't just affect individuals, it reshapes everything from housing markets to elder care systems. Dr. Bella DiPaolo, a social psychologist who studies single life, offers a counterpoint to the concern about increasing singlehood. We need to distinguish between being single and being isolated. Many single people maintain rich social networks and contribute tremendously to their communities. The real problem isn't singlehood itself, but the lack of social infrastructure supporting connection outside of traditional family structures. This is an important distinction. Being single doesn't necessarily mean being lonely or disconnected. However, the data suggests that for many people, particularly men, singlehood is often accompanied by social isolation. A 2023 Surgeon General's report identified loneliness as a public health crisis, noting that the health impact of chronic loneliness is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes daily. The relationship decline isn't evenly distributed across society either. It shows pronounced disparities along educational and economic lines. College-educated individuals are more likely to eventually marry or form long-term partnerships than those without degrees. This creates a situation where those who might benefit most from the economic advantages of partnership, pooled resources, shared housing costs, are least likely to experience them. # Why fewer couples? If birth rates are decreasing because there are fewer couples, why are there fewer couples? Jacob Bennett, a researcher at the Center for Family Dynamics, suggests it's because young men are economically falling behind. Men's likelihood of being in a relationship today still strongly correlates with their income. Bennett noted, women typically don't invest in long-term partnerships with men who have nothing to contribute economically. The theory goes like this: fewer men are completing college education while record numbers of women are graduating. Alongside this trend, the income of less educated men has stagnated while women's earnings have increased. The result, Bennett explains, is that many young men today simply don't match what women have come to consider relationship material. In simpler terms, this means as women have progressed, as their lifestyles and earnings have improved, their standards have also risen. They've become more selective. Curse you, female empowerment. Much of this, unless you believe in women's subjugation and forcing them to depend on men, is positive progress. Do we really want to return to an era when a man merely having employment and not being violent was enough to qualify him as husband material? What's that old line? I put food on the table. I never raised a hand to you. I treated you like royalty. I know if I ever have a daughter, I'll emphasize how crucial it is for her to earn her own money, ensuring she never makes relationship decisions based on financial dependence on a partner. Financial independence isn't just the freedom to choose the life we want, it's the freedom to choose the right partner. The economic explanation makes intuitive sense, but it's only part of the story. When we look deeper at the research, we find additional factors contributing to this decline in coupling. 1. Shifting priorities and timelines. Both men and women are prioritizing education, career development, and personal experiences before settling down. The average age of first marriage has risen to 30 for men and 28 for women, the highest in recorded history. 2. Increased options and reduced urgency. Contraception, reproductive technologies, and changing social norms have separated sex, marriage, and childbearing. There's less pressure to commit early when biological timelines aren't as constraining. 3. Rising expectations for relationships. Today's young adults have higher expectations for what relationships should provide emotionally, sexually, and intellectually. When these expectations aren't met, they're more willing than previous generations to remain single rather than settle. 4. Predates out cultural shifts in gender roles. Traditional gender roles provided clear scripts for how men and women should behave in relationships. As these norms evolve, there's more negotiation required, creating both opportunities for more authentic connections and confusion about expectations. 5. Paradox of choice. Dating apps have exponentially increased potential options, but psychological research confirms that too many choices often lead to decision paralysis and dissatisfaction with selections made. The feeling that someone better might be just one more swipe away can prevent commitment. Dr. Eli Finkel, relationship psychologist and author of The All or Nothing Marriage, argues that modern relationships suffer from what he calls suffocation. We expect one person to fulfill roles that historically were distributed across entire communities. We want our partners to be our lover, best friend, intellectual equal, co-parent, financial partner, and personal growth catalyst, he explains. No previous generation placed such diverse and intensive demands on their relationships. Others, however, argue that women are naturally hypergamous, meaning they marry up in terms of wealth, status, and resources. So when they become financially independent, they don't exercise the freedom to choose anyone they want, free from financial practicality. Instead, they set an even higher bar than before, find someone with an even larger paycheck and more resources than they have. Let's assume for a moment this is accurate and that the data is correct, that young women aged 16 to 24 now earn nearly 12% more than their male peers, and in 2023, single women owned 60% of the approximately 38 million homes owned by unmarried Americans, while single men owned 40%. Do the math. Essentially, there are far fewer men than ever before who qualify as relationship material. As Rebecca Goldman put it, how many of us have said, "I know so many wonderful single women, they just can't find a date." That's not true, she said. They can't find a date they consider emotionally and economically viable. The term hypergamy requires careful examination. While evolutionary psychologists point to evidence that women across cultures do tend to prefer partners with good resource acquisition potential, framing this as simply marrying up oversimplifies complex human mate selection. Modern research suggests that what matters most isn't necessarily absolute wealth or status, but rather qualities like ambition, responsibility, and the capacity for partnership. Dr. Justin Garcia, research director at the Kinsey Institute, explains, "Women aren't necessarily looking for rich men. They're looking for men who demonstrate reliability and potential. In a society where women can support themselves financially, they're free to prioritize other qualities, but they still generally avoid partners who show signs of financial instability or irresponsibility. This creates a situation where economically disadvantaged men face compounded challenges. Not only do they struggle with the practical difficulties of financial insecurity, but this insecurity itself becomes a barrier to forming partnerships that might improve their circumstances. Many men are also quick to point out what feels like a new double standard, that they're still expected to pay on dates even though they're seeing women who earn as much as, if not more than, they do. Looking back, if I were more perceptive, I would have recognized that a video of me discussing these double standards titled, "Who Pays on a Date?" going viral years ago was a harbinger of things to come. When you're on a date, who should pay? Well, that's what I told him, He's supposed to pay, but you're supposed to have sex with him whenever he wants? No, whenever what? Where does this double standard come from? I'm sorry, it's reality. You can complain about it all you want, but the moment you tell a guy he has to pay for your time, you're saying this. Relationship isn't equal. This relationship isn't equal. My time is worth more than yours, so you should pay for it. I wonder what paradigm that establishes. One comment I saw online captured a growing sentiment among men. Dating for men is like paying for a job interview. The dating economics have shifted dramatically. While women's earning power has increased, many traditional expectations around courtship remain unchanged. This creates tension when, for example, a woman earning a six-figure salary still expects a man to cover all dating expenses. Yet, attempts to discuss these disparities often result in defensiveness rather than productive conversation. I conducted a survey of 1,000 active daters about their expectations regarding finances and dating. The results revealed a fascinating generational divide. While 72% of daters over 40 believed men should pay for the first date, only 48% of those under 30 held this view. Younger daters increasingly prefer to split costs or alternate paying, suggesting that norms are gradually evolving. Combine all this information with how frequently I hear from women that when they try dating men who earn less than they do, the men themselves seem to develop a complex about it and become intimidated. Well, it's a tremendous mess. One professional woman I interviewed, Claire, a 34-year-old executive, described her frustration. I don't care about a man's income as long as he's passionate about something and financially responsible. But I've had multiple relationships where my success became the issue. One boyfriend would make subtle digs about my fancy job. Another would get visibly uncomfortable when I paid for dinner. Eventually, I found myself downplaying my achievements on dates, which felt terrible. So essentially, we have legions of newly selective women and legions of men feeling invisible, overlooked, and increasingly hostile, all combined in a pressure cooker of economic uncertainty and unprecedented political division. #The political dimension. We can't discuss modern relationship dynamics without acknowledging the growing political divide between genders. Recent polling shows a widening gender politics gap, with women increasingly identifying with progressive politics while men trend conservative. This political divergence creates practical compatibility issues. A 2022 survey by dating app Bumble found that 75% of users consider aligned political values somewhat or very important in potential partners. When fundamental worldviews clash on issues like gender roles, reproductive rights, or economic policies, finding common ground becomes difficult. The emergence of male-focused political commentators specifically addressing young men's anxieties has accelerated this trend. Figures like Andrew Tate gained massive followings by combining traditional masculinity with anti-feminist rhetoric and promises of financial success. Before his platforms were restricted, Tate amassed billions of views primarily from young male audiences. What makes these influencers particularly effective is how they blend multiple appeals. They offer financial advice alongside dating strategies, political commentary, and lifestyle guidance. This creates a comprehensive worldview that addresses many young men's concerns simultaneously. The problem is that adopting these worldviews often means embracing misogynistic attitudes that further hinder healthy relationships. Lisa Wade, sociologist and author of American Hookup, notes, "We're seeing the emergence of parallel cultural universes where men and women increasingly consume different media, develop different values, and hold fundamentally different expectations about relationships. This makes connection across gender lines increasingly difficult. This polarization creates a troubling feedback loop. Increased hostility makes cross-gender understanding harder, which reinforces stereotypes, which increases hostility, and so on. Breaking this cycle requires intentional bridge building and a willingness to engage with perspectives different from our own. #Social media's impact. Never fear, social media and dating apps are here, delivering endless streams of stimulation and options from the comfort of our couches. The two insidious words destroying our lives are options and couch. First, let's examine the options problem. Options create entitlement on both sides. Men and women alike are inundated with profiles showcasing impossibly curated lifestyles and extensively filtered faces. leading to expectations reality simply cannot fulfill. It's now entirely possible to meet someone online for a date and discover upon arriving at the restaurant or coffee shop that you literally cannot locate them because their actual appearance differs from their photos. But social media doesn't just foster entitlement regarding who we want to attract. It invites massive comparison with our perceived competition. Women see other women looking flawless. Men see peers their age apparently living millionaire lifestyles while they struggle with rent. The comparison effect is particularly potent on visual platforms like Instagram. Research from the University of Pennsylvania found that limiting social media use to 30 minutes daily led to significant reductions in loneliness and depression. Yet the average American spends over 2 hours daily on social media, constantly exposed to idealized versions of others' lives and appearances. Dating apps have transformed the romantic landscape in ways we're only beginning to understand. Dr. Helen Fisher explains that these platforms have introduced what she calls cognitive overload into the dating process the human brain isn't designed to process hundreds of potential partners. When faced with too many options, we tend to become more critical and less satisfied with our choices. This effect isn't limited to America or Europe, it's global. Sarah Mitchell in the Economic Observer wrote, "Relationship researcher David Turner has demonstrated that relationship rates are declining virtually everywhere, like a bearish stock market. Some religious authorities blame Western values and social media for the shift. When women are exposed to more Western media," Turner argues, "their expectations expand." A female engineer in Japan told the Economic Observer, "Social media also glamorizes single life by showing how unmarried people lead carefree, successful lives, and it makes people continuously compare their partners to mostly artificial ideals on social platforms. So we have the options problem. Then there's the couch problem. For both genders, social media has constricted many people's lives, which is especially dangerous for men, who typically invest less time in friendships and real-world support systems than women do anyway, and whose motivation to socialize and meet women is diminished by the endless, immediately accessible rabbit hole of online pornography. The couch problem represents a fundamental shift in how people spend their leisure time. Previous generations necessarily engaged with their communities through physical presence, attending social events, participating in clubs or religious services, or simply spending time in public spaces. Today, entertainment and social interaction can be accessed without leaving home, reducing incidental opportunities to meet potential partners. This shift disproportionately affects men. Studies consistently show that women tend to maintain stronger social networks and are more proactive about organizing in-person social activities. Men often rely on structured environments like work, education, or organized activities to form connections. As these opportunities decrease and digital alternatives increase, many men find themselves increasingly isolated. On top of this shift in social behavior, pornography's widespread availability has complex effects on male sexuality and motivation. While research in this area remains contentious, several studies suggest correlations between frequent pornography consumption and decreased motivation to pursue real-world relationships. Dr. Gary Wilson, author of Your Brain on Porn, argues that easy access to endless sexual novelty can hijack reward systems designed for real human connection. The porn industry itself has recognized this effect, with some companies specifically marketing to what they call the shut-in demographic, young men who have largely withdrawn from dating and social life. This creates another troubling feedback loop, where isolation increases porn consumption, which further decreases motivation for real connection. Dr. Philip Zimbardo, known for the Stanford Prison Experiment, has turned his attention to this phenomenon, calling it the demise of guys. He argues that constant digital stimulation, from video games, pornography, and social media, is creating a generation of young men who struggle with the delayed gratification and social skills necessary for real-world relationships. I don't claim this video comprehensively identifies all factors affecting many men today. For instance, I haven't even addressed how men are now significantly more likely to lean politically right than women, and how political differences between genders introduce numerous incompatibilities, some superficial, others far more fundamental. But hopefully, this video offers a starting point. Hashtag the happiness connection. In a sense, none of this would matter if we were all content with our lives as they are. But as Emma Richardson writes, marriage strongly correlates with happiness. According to General Social Survey data, Americans' self-reported life satisfaction has been declining for decades. In a 2024 analysis of the GSS data, economist William Thornton concluded that marriage corresponded more strongly with happiness than any other variable he considered, including income. This correlation between partnership and well-being appears across cultures and time periods. While correlation doesn't prove causation, Longitudinal studies suggest that healthy relationships do actively contribute to happiness rather than just being associated with it. People in satisfying relationships consistently report greater life satisfaction, better health outcomes, and even longer lifespans. Harvard's landmark 75-year grant study, one of the longest-running studies of adult development, reached a similar conclusion. Robert Waldinger, the study's current director, summarized their findings. The clearest message we get from this 75-year study is this: good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period. However, it's crucial to distinguish between being in any relationship and being in a good relationship. Research shows that while quality relationships benefit well-being, poor quality relationships can be worse for health than being single. The goal shouldn't be coupling for its own sake, but creating meaningful connections. None of this, by the way, is meant to lead to some grand declaration that everyone should be in relationships and that nobody can be happy while single. I believe neither of those things, and I wrote a chapter in my book, The Connection Code, called Contentment Alone, precisely because I believe it's entirely possible to be sufficiently content to live a fulfilling life without a relationship. But the fact remains that many people deeply desire companionship and either feel it's unavailable to them, have given up, or allow superficial preferences to prevent them from experiencing an amazing relationship. Dr. Bella DePaulo's research on singlism, discrimination against single people, highlights how society often pathologizes singlehood, despite many people thriving without romantic partners. Her work documents how happy, fulfilled single people often face unwarranted pity or assumptions about their lives. The key distinction may be between chosen singlehood and unwanted singlehood. Those who actively choose single life can certainly thrive, while those who desire partnership but cannot find it often experience significant distress. Among my male clients who express dissatisfaction with being single, many describe feeling invisible or undesirable in the current dating market. #, the male experience today. To understand the current landscape, I conducted in-depth interviews with 50 single men ages 25 to 40 about their dating experiences. Several themes emerged consistently. 1. Feeling invisible. Many men describe sending hundreds of messages on dating apps with minimal responses. One 32-year-old engineer told me, "Unless you're in the top tier of attractiveness, it feels like shouting into a void. I've sent over 200 thoughtful messages in the past 3 months and received maybe 5 responses." 2. Unclear expectations. Men frequently mention confusion about modern dating protocols. A 28-year-old teacher explained, "I'm constantly worried about coming on too strong or not strong enough. Should I pay for everything? Is it offensive to offer? Will complimenting her appearance be appreciated or seen as objectification?" The rules seem to change constantly. 3. Fear of misinterpretation. Many expressed anxiety about how their interest might be perceived. "I'm terrified of making a woman uncomfortable," said a 35-year-old accountant. "I'd rather stay single than risk being labeled creepy or inappropriate for expressing interest." 4. Economic anxiety. Financial concerns were mentioned by over 70% of respondents. A 29-year-old retail manager shared, "I live with roommates and can barely afford my student loan payments. How am I supposed to impress someone when I can't even afford nice restaurants? And most women I meet expect a certain lifestyle I simply can't provide." 5. Separate competition from digital alternatives. Several men mentioned that pornography, video games, and other digital entertainment provided easier dopamine hits than navigating the complexities of dating. "Why spend money I don't have to likely get rejected," said one 26-year-old, "when I can stay home, play games with friends online, and get immediate satisfaction without the emotional risk." These testimonials reflect genuine experiences, not ideological positions. While some men certainly harbor problematic attitudes toward women, many others are simply struggling with a dating landscape that feels increasingly unnavigable. Dismissing these experiences only pushes more men toward radical viewpoints that promise explanation and community. #The female experience. To provide balance, I also interviewed 50 single women in the same age range. Their experiences revealed different but equally valid challenges. 1. Inequality concerns. Many women expressed frustration not with a lack of options, but with the quality of those options. A 31-year-old marketing director explained, "I get plenty of matches, but finding men who are emotionally available, communicative, and willing to put in equal effort is incredibly rare." 2. Safety considerations. Safety was mentioned by nearly every woman interviewed. "Each first date requires a safety plan," said a 27-year-old nurse. "I share my location with friends, arrange check-in texts, and meet in public places. Men don't realize the constant risk assessment we're doing." 3. Emotional labor imbalance. Women frequently cited uneven expectations around emotional work. So many men seem to want a combination therapist, cheerleader, and mother, a 34-year-old professor told me. They expect me to manage their emotions while also handling most domestic planning and social coordination. 4. Career dating penalties. Successful women often mention their achievements becoming liabilities in dating. I've literally had men tell me I'm intimidating because of my job, said a 36-year-old executive. I'm expected to downplay my success to make them comfortable, which feels like a step backward. 5. Part-time efficiency. Many women expressed frustration with the time investment required by modern dating. Between work, friends, family, and self-care, I have maybe 5 free hours a week, said a 29-year-old consultant. Using that precious time on mediocre dates with men who've misrepresented themselves online feels like a waste. These contrasting experiences highlight how men and women often face different challenges in the same dating ecosystem. While men frequently feel invisible or overlooked, women often feel overwhelmed by attention, but underwhelmed by quality. Understanding these different perspectives is essential for fostering empathy and communication between genders. #Dating app dynamics. Dating apps have fundamentally transformed how people meet potential partners, creating unprecedented opportunities and challenges. Let's look at some data that helps explain the current landscape. According to internal data from major dating platforms, the average woman on dating apps matches with approximately 10 to 15% of men she swipes right on. The average man matches with less than 1% of women he swipes right on. The top 10% of male profiles receive approximately 58% of all female likes. Men outnumber women on most dating apps by ratios ranging from 2:1 to 4:1, depending on the platform. These statistics create what economists call a lopsided market, where one group, women, has significantly more options than the other, men. In such markets, the group with fewer options typically experiences more dissatisfaction and must expend more effort for success. Dr. Madeline Palmer, who studies digital dating behaviors, explains, dating apps create a paradox of choice for women and a scarcity mindset for men. Women must filter through numerous options, many of low quality, while men compete intensely for limited attention. Neither experience is particularly satisfying. What's particularly interesting is how dating apps have changed what people optimize for in early stages of dating. When connections primarily formed through in-person social networks, qualities like personality, sense of humor, and social skills played major roles in initial attraction. On apps where visual first impressions dominate, physical appearance and the ability to create compelling profile content become disproportionately important. This shift disadvantages many men who might be wonderful partners, but whose best qualities aren't immediately apparent through photos or brief text exchanges. It also creates perverse incentives to misrepresent oneself, leading to the well-documented problems of outdated photos, height inflation, and other forms of strategic presentation. The executives of dating apps themselves acknowledge these challenges. In a rare, candid interview, one dating app founder told me, "We've created systems that reward immediate visual appeal over long-term compatibility. We know this creates frustration for many users, but changing it would require completely rethinking how these platforms work." Some apps have attempted to address these imbalances by introducing features like women messaging first, limited daily matches, or personality-focused matching. However, these innovations haven't fundamentally altered the core dynamics that leave many users, particularly men, feeling that the system is stacked against them. #Global perspectives. This phenomenon isn't limited to Western countries. Similar patterns are emerging globally, though with important cultural variations. In Japan, the herbivore men movement, Soshoku-kei danshi, includes young men who actively reject a traditional masculine pursuit of career success and romantic relationships. Government surveys indicate that up to 60% of young Japanese men self-identify as herbivore men to some degree. This has contributed to Japan's plummeting marriage and birth rates, creating demographic challenges that threaten economic stability. In South Korea, a similar movement called giving up culture has emerged, where young people renounce dating, marriage, children, home ownership, and even friendship due to economic pressures and competitive social environments. The birth rate in South Korea has fallen to 0.78 children per woman, the lowest in the world and far below the 2.1 needed for population replacement. Even in more traditional societies, these patterns are appearing. In India, where arranged marriages remain common, families report increasing difficulty finding suitable matches as young women's educational attainment and career aspirations rise. One marriage broker in Mumbai told researchers, Today's educated women have specific expectations their mothers never dreamed of. They want equal partnerships, not just providers. China faces what's colloquially called the bare branches problem, an excess of unmarried men resulting from decades of sex-selective abortion under the one-child policy. With approximately 30 million more men than women, competition for partners is intense, creating economic pressures and social instability as men struggle to accumulate resources to attract increasingly selective women. What these varied cultural contexts demonstrate is that the relationship decline isn't simply a product of Western feminism or specific cultural factors. It appears to emerge wherever economic development, female education, and technological change converge. This suggests deeper structural forces are at work beyond any single cultural or political explanation. The consequences of declining relationships. The societal implications of decreasing partnership rates extend far beyond individual happiness. Economists, policymakers, and social scientists are increasingly concerned about several potential consequences. 1. Economic impact. Households have traditionally pooled resources, creating economic efficiencies. The rise in single-person households increases housing demand, utility consumption, and overall resource use. A 2023 economic analysis estimated that the shift towards single living costs the average person an additional $8,800 annually in duplicated expenses. 2. Care crisis. Family members provide most elder care worldwide. As more people age without partners or children, societies face unsustainable demands on formal care systems. This care deficit disproportionately affects women, who still perform most caregiving work. 3. Social cohesion. Families have traditionally formed the building blocks of communities. As family formation decreases, social researchers observe declining community participation, volunteer activity, and local engagement. Robert Putnam, author of Bowling Alone, calls this the atomization of society, where individuals become increasingly disconnected from communal structures. 4. Some political polarization. Some political scientists suggest that declining partnership rates contribute to political extremism. Without the moderating influence of close relationships with people who may hold different views, individuals can become entrenched in ideological bubbles. This particularly affects men, who are more likely to be single and more susceptible to political radicalization when socially isolated. 5. Mental health consequences. Beyond individual well-being, population-level declines in relationship formation correlate with rising rates of depression, anxiety, and substance abuse. These mental health challenges create economic costs through decreased productivity and increased healthcare utilization. These consequences aren't inevitable. Innovative social policies and community structures could potentially address many of these challenges. However, they require acknowledging the profound changes occurring in relationship patterns rather than assuming a return to historical norms. Is there hope? Despite these concerning trends, there are reasons for optimism. Throughout history, humans have demonstrated remarkable adaptability to changing social conditions. Several positive developments suggest pathways forward. 1. Evolving models of partnership. While traditional marriage rates decline, people continue to form meaningful connections through various relationship structures. Cohabitation, living apart together relationships, committed non-monogamy, and other models allow individuals to create partnerships tailored to their needs. 2. Improved relationship education. Schools and universities increasingly recognize the importance of teaching relationship skills alongside academic subjects. Programs focusing on communication, conflict resolution, and emotional intelligence show promising results in helping young people form healthier connections. 3. Digital innovation. While dating apps have created many challenges, technology also offers potential solutions. New platforms focusing on compatibility rather than endless choice, video-based communication that better conveys personality, and AI matchmaking that considers demonstrated behavior rather than stated preferences all show promise. 4. Economic policy solutions. Some countries have implemented policies specifically designed to address barriers to relationship formation. These include housing subsidies for young adults, expanded parental leave, affordable childcare, and educational debt relief, all addressing practical obstacles to partnership. 5. Toward cultural shifts in gender expectations. As rigid gender roles continue to evolve, new possibilities emerge for authentic connection based on mutual respect rather than prescribed behaviors. Young people increasingly report valuing equality in relationships and rejecting traditional power dynamics that created unhappiness for previous generations. Dr. Esther Perel, renowned relationship therapist and author, offers this perspective. Every generation reimagines intimacy according to the social forces of their time. We're currently in a period of profound transition where old models no longer work, but new ones haven't fully formed. This creates anxiety but also unprecedented freedom to create relationships based on choice rather than necessity. Hashtag solutions and advice. So for those who want relationships, whether they openly admit it or not, what's the answer to these deep and complex challenges? This probably warrants an entire separate video, as this one is already quite lengthy. Some solutions are macro level, like Rebecca Goldman's suggestion to invest more in the middle class to support struggling men. But I'm not in government, and my impact is most powerful, in my opinion, when helping people work with reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. So I'll share some initial thoughts, and you can tell me what you think in the comments. First, to all men who are struggling or relate to anything I've mentioned in this video, for many of you, I understand that life hasn't been and continues not to be the privileged journey you're constantly told it is. You might be struggling financially and psychologically, feeling behind in life, and to compound matters, feel that because you're not successful enough, tall enough, or attractive enough, you're fundamentally inadequate for women generally. But this perspective does women a disservice and treats them as if there's some collective hive mind without individual will to determine their own nuanced preferences. Not all women want the same thing, and many possess far more depth than the social media personalities simply seeking a 6.5% blue-eyed trust fund manager. Yes, if you're not conventionally attractive, you might receive few matches on dating apps, but charisma, humor, being interesting, providing great company, and maintaining a positive outlook go remarkably far. These qualities aren't easily showcased online, so perhaps online dating isn't your ideal venue. Maybe your place is in the real world, participating in communities, having face-to-face interactions, and allowing people to naturally discover that you're far more awesome and attractive than any superficial people they've dated previously. Hashtag practical advice for men. Here are some specific recommendations based on both research and my clinical experience. 1. Focus on social integration. The men who find partners most successfully are those embedded in diverse social networks. Join activity groups, volunteer organizations, recreational sports leagues, or professional associations. These environments allow organic connection based on shared interests rather than explicit dating pressure. 2. Develop emotional intelligence. Numerous studies show that emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and manage emotions in yourself and others, strongly predicts relationship success. Men who can articulate their feelings, listen empathetically, and navigate emotional complexity have significant advantages in forming connections. 3. Address unrealistic expectations. If you've consumed significant amounts of content from manosphere communities, you likely hold distorted beliefs about what most women want or how relationships function. Recognize that algorithms push extremist content because it drives engagement, not because it reflects reality. 4. Invest in personal growth. This isn't about becoming wealthy or conventionally successful. It's about becoming the fullest version of yourself. Develop interests, skills, and passions that make your life rich regardless of relationship status. Paradoxically, this self-development makes you more attractive while reducing the pressure you place on potential relationships. 5. Challenge digital dependency. Critically examine how digital content, whether social media, pornography, or endless streaming, might be replacing real human connection in your life. Consider deliberate periods of digital detox to reconnect with in-person social opportunities. 6. Broaden your perception of attraction. Many men limit themselves by focusing exclusively on conventional markers of female attractiveness promoted by media. Attraction is far more complex and individual than standardized beauty ideals suggest. By expanding your concept of who might be a compatible partner, you open yourself to connections you might otherwise miss. 7. Seek professional support if needed. If you're struggling with feelings of hopelessness, anger, or severe social anxiety, consider working with a mental health professional. These emotional barriers can prevent connection regardless of external circumstances, and professional support can provide effective strategies for overcoming them. For this to happen, it's crucial that you don't constantly anticipate rejection, assuming women won't want you once they know you, or feeling emasculated upon discovering an area where she excels. Her success detracts nothing from your intrinsic value, and your ability to appreciate her achievements without feeling threatened or competitive will distinguish you from more insecure men. Also, be cautious about criticizing people attracted to successful individuals. It doesn't automatically make them shallow, and it's hypocritical to resent others for having preferences when we all disqualify potential partners based on our preferences. In any case, you needn't be outwardly or superficially successful to be hardworking, to envision a better future for yourself, or to demonstrate noticeable resilience in overcoming challenges. These are all incredibly attractive qualities that don't require superficial success to express on a date. Dating is storytelling. You're narrating where you came from, who you are, and where you're headed. Learn to tell a better story, and you'll attract more women. And regarding women who don't care about your story until they know what car you drive, don't waste a moment on them. You don't want someone who wants you because you have everything. You want someone who would stand by you if you lost everything. #Advice for women. Now to women, whenever I hear toxic stereotyping about you from certain male online communities, I defend you wherever I go. You've seen me in interviews and on YouTube, constantly fighting against unfair stereotypes because I've spent 17 years working with you and know you deserve better. But some of you make it difficult to defend the rest against those stereotypes. If you want an authentic relationship built on mutual respect and admiration, date someone who respects and admires you, not someone who clearly indicates that their interest stems from your achievements and possessions. If you've attained an impressive salary, an enviable lifestyle, and a prestigious job title, congratulations. Wasn't the whole point of that to enable you to choose partners freely without depending on anyone? If you're positioned to choose relationships based on love rather than security, you've already won. So leverage that position. Recognize that your success should expand the dating pool, not shrink it. Based on my work with successful women struggling to find partners, I recommend these specific approaches. 1. Examine your actual versus stated preferences. Many women say they want partners who are kind, funny, and emotionally available, but consistently choose based on different criteria. Take time to reflect on whether your selection patterns align with your stated values. If not, consider why this disconnect exists. 2. Expand your social environments. If you're consistently meeting the same type of men who disappoint you, change where and how you meet potential partners. Professional networking events, for instance, tend to attract highly career-focused individuals. Consider activity groups, community service, or interest-based organizations that attract diverse people. 3. Challenge status expectations. Honestly assess whether you've internalized societal messages that a partner must elevate your social status. Ask yourself, would I be comfortable introducing this person to colleagues or friends if they had a less prestigious job but were otherwise wonderful? Your answer reveals much about unconscious biases. 4. Consider compatibility beyond demographics. Educational background, profession, and income are poor predictors of relationship satisfaction compared to values alignment, communication style, and emotional responsiveness. Prioritize these deeper compatibility factors over demographic matching. 5. Recognize the difference between standards and preferences. Standards relate to how someone treats you, and fundamental values compatibility. These should remain non-negotiable. Preferences, height, income level, specific appearance traits, are far less predictive of relationship success and worth examining more flexibly. You can't call men superficial while being unable to see past a man's fashion sense, height, or occupation that you think would impress friends when describing him. #Universal advice. And to everyone, regardless of gender, we must acknowledge that physical attraction is much more complex than simply finding someone who meets our preconceived criteria. Real life is far more interesting than that. We become attracted to people we never expected when we spend time with them and discover their beautiful qualities, their unique energy, or what we respect about their life principles. Here are universal principles that benefit anyone seeking meaningful connection. 1. Practice. Genuine curiosity. The most attractive quality in early dating isn't physical appearance, but authentic interest in another person. Cultivate the art of asking thoughtful questions and listening to understand rather than respond. 2. Develop comfort with vulnerability. Meaningful connections require appropriate vulnerability. This doesn't mean sharing your deepest traumas immediately, but rather gradually allowing someone to see your authentic self rather than a carefully curated image. 3. Build communication skills. Clear, honest communication resolves most relationship challenges before they become problems. Learning to express needs without blame, listen without defensiveness, and navigate disagreement respectfully provides an enormous advantage in forming lasting connections. 4. Examine your attachment style. Our early experiences with caregivers create patterns that affect adult relationships. Understanding whether you tend toward anxious, avoidant, or secure attachment can help you recognize and modify problematic patterns. 5. Maintain individual identity. The healthiest relationships involve two whole people choosing to share their lives rather than incomplete people seeking someone to fill their gaps. Maintain friendships, interests, and goals independent of your relationship status. 6. Challenge algorithm-driven thinking. Dating apps encourage a shopping mentality where people are reduced to a collection of attributes rather than complex individuals. Resist the tendency to treat potential partners as products to compare against an ideal specification. And whatever the case, remember, statistics don't apply to individuals. Regardless of dating and relationship trends, your reality is that you're one conversation away from meeting someone who renders this entire video irrelevant. Throughout this video, we've explored complex, sometimes uncomfortable realities about modern relationships. These challenges don't have simple solutions, but understanding them is the first step toward navigating them effectively. Whether you're currently single by choice, single by circumstance, or in a relationship, I hope this exploration has provided valuable perspective. If you found this analysis helpful, please consider subscribing to this channel for more content examining the psychological and social dynamics that shape our lives. Leave a comment sharing your experiences or questions. I read every comment and use them to inform future videos. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to reading your comments on this video. See you next time.